Let's tell us about the gateway process. This is the one I know the least
Mhm.
about.
So the gateway process is tied with a gentleman named Robert Monroe. And Robert Monroe was a radio broadcast host who had these weird, sort of out of body experiences. He wrote a book in 1971 called Journeys Out of the Body. And he was very much interested in the utilization of what's called binaural beats. And he believed, and this is tied with, you showed the book of Jose Delgado, Physical Control of the Mind, whether it be transhumanism, Neuralink, all this stuff has to do with figuring out how electronic signals can actually begin to manipulate the brain. And the brain then manipulates the mind, and therefore it manipulates people's perceptions. And so he begins, this is again in the mid 70s. Um, he develops his own institute called the Monroe Institute, which is still thriving today. Robert Monroe is dead, but he was interested and he developed a technique called the Hemi-Sync. And Rachel's even talked about in one of her Substacks something called
Yes, I remember that.
um, yeah, hypnosissipron, and that is about the fact that there's forms of, vulgarity in that industry where people will watch increasingly more intense forms of intercourse, and the beats that are behind it, the frequencies begin to program because there's subtle words underneath the frequencies of the beats that they'll begin to think that they're transgender, that they want to become a woman. And this is quite effective. They've used binaural beats, and they've been able to do like open surgery on people as a alternative to anesthetics. And so this Hemi-Sync project is really the point of the gateway process. And so I pulled it up before we came on. If you on the Monroe Institute, for a small fee of $1,000 and $1,065, you can then do an 8-week course of which then you put these headphones on and go through this mind altering. They believe that it reconnects the right and the left hemispheres. It activates the corpus callosum, which there's theories about sexual orgasm, where this is one of the few points in which both hemispheres are connected. And so when you look at mind programming, it's usually tied with some sort of erotic dimension or getting somebody in an orgasmic state to be programmed. Well, this is claiming that without that, it's able to use these frequencies or alter different frequencies. One ear will hear one, another one will hear another, and this will somehow fuse the brain. And this is called a Hemi-Sync process. And it's believed that this is expanding one's consciousness. It makes their brain better. They're able to access more information. They, again, tied with the human potential movement, although it's not explicitly tied to it, you can see the philosophy and the ideas tied to it, that you use these beats, these binaural beats, this Hemi-Sync frequencies, and that you can expand your consciousness and sort of elevate yourself to a new state. Well, this gateway process was being utilized by the military, and it wasn't revealed until more recently that all these CIA papers came out. And but there was one page missing. It was page 25, I believe. And so there's this huge investigation and all these FOIA requests, and they eventually found that the paper was at the Monroe Institute. And so they published it, and basically it showed that people were going into these altered states of consciousness. They were encountering entities. They were able to gain information. And so this was for those who didn't have the sort of predilection to remote viewing, they would be able to go through these courses and begin to activate and utilize some of these techniques. And so that's where then it's become very popular for young people, because now you can go to YouTube, and some of these have been uploaded as YouTube videos, and that people will put on these headphones and listen to these beats. And then Robert Monroe's like telling you how to breathe and what to think about and all this different stuff. So this is tied then to this Monroe Institute, where a YouTube channel, um, Sean Ryan show. He's a former, again, military guy. He has a bunch of CIA people on. It could be a limited hangout show, not sure. But he recently had a guy named Sean Webb on, who has also been going to the Monroe Institute, working with Joseph McMoneagle, who's more of the Stargate project. That's a person who's claimed to be psychic and have these abilities, which I think it's quite convincing that they actually do have some type of extrasensory abilities. The question is, what are the ramifications? And interestingly enough, they're all tied with the occult. And Scientology is going to play a huge part because Pat Price, one of the remote viewers of the Stanford Research Institute, the one who really got that project off the ground, and the reason why the government gave them over $20 million to do all this research, he gets mysteriously killed. Well, it's speculated that nobody knows exactly how he died. So there's speculations that Russia, a KGB agent did it. There's other speculations that the CIA did it because he knew too much information. But however it was, he died. Apparently, to the doctor that was there at the hospital, a man with a briefcase brought his dead body in, said he died from a heart attack, and without any autopsy, that the government didn't want an autopsy, and they cremated his body before even telling his wife that he passed away. So it seems like something's up there, but my point is that the gateway process is really a sort of after effect of this or the Stargate project. But the gateway process is totally public now, and you can then pay and access all this stuff and all these electronic tools to stimulate your brain and gain higher access.